British Prime Minister Boris Johnson vows to fight on as members of his Conservative Party resign in droves, saying they've lost confidence in his leadership. The Czech Republic takes on the rotating EU presidency as Ursula von der Leyen warns the bloc to prepare for a complete cut-off in Russian gas.
Here in the Cube, we take a look at online misinformation related to the ongoing farmers' protests in the Netherlands.
Plus 100 years of artist Lucian Freud, we take a look at a new landmark exhibition in London. I'm Helena Humphrey, glad you could join me. Boris Johnson's future as UK Prime Minister is hanging by a thread this evening after a wave of more resignations today, following the departure of two key cabinet ministers last night. The Tory party leader faced fierce criticism and calls to resign during today's Prime Minister's questions. But Johnson is adamant that he will not step down. Well, straight over to London then, when we can cross over to Vinnie McAviney, who is covering this for us tonight. Vinnie, Boris Johnson has insisted that he will not be going anywhere, that he won't step down, despite a growing revolt against his leadership. Can he hold on much longer?
Well, Boris Johnson has just done a gruelling few hours before a parliamentary committee with all the heads of the committees, in which it was put to him he might not be Prime Minister for much longer. And he said he well and truly intends to stay as Prime Minister. But as he was doing that, being picked apart on his policies and his judgment over the Chris Pincher affair, 33 government ministers, that was where the tally got to in the number of ministers, PPSs, secretaries of state, members of government having left, saying that they did not have confidence in him anymore. And as we speak, as we understand it, Nadeem Zahawi, the man who yesterday he appointed up to the position of Chancellor, is leading a delegation of other secretaries of state, other senior members of the party to the Prime Minister to tell him that enough is enough. He cannot govern anymore and that he needs to go. The Prime Minister, though, adamant still that because of that mandate that he got at the 2019 general election, winning that 80-seat majority, he still is the person to stick around. But for now, he really is hanging by a thread.
Vinnie, good to talk to you. Thank you. To Brussels now, where the Czech Republic assumes the EU presidency today, taking over the rotating role from France. The official slogan for its 6-month tenure is "Europe as a task," and with an agenda comprising food security, inflation and the war in Ukraine, Prague certainly has its hands full, as Neil O'Reilly now reports.
6 months of unprecedented challenges. At the European Parliament sitting in Strasbourg, EU leaders have been setting out the tasks ahead under the Czech presidency of the bloc. The country has taken over the half-yearly rotating role from France and will continue to work on multiple crises caused by the war in Ukraine, including a refugee influx and soaring energy and food prices.
The main challenge in the period ahead will be to find a united and strong consensus on measures that will mitigate the negative impact of the current crises on our citizens as much as possible. Because inflation, energy scarcity or food crises are threats that we can best face together. I believe that both the Council and the European Parliament will be in agreement on this.
In facing the perceived Russian threats to Europe's stability, the Commission President said the European Union needed to invoke the spirit of resistance shown by Czechs in previous times.
We've all seen the images of the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Ukrainian citizens who stood in the way of Russian soldiers unarmed. These images remind us of a different invasion and a different phase of the resistance of Europe against oppression. Prague, 1968.
Over the coming months, Brussels aims to make emergency plans for a complete cut-off of Russian gas should tensions with Moscow over Ukraine escalate. Putting these in place will be among the Czech presidency's toughest tasks.
And those plans to reduce dependency on Russian gas have been at the centre of the European Parliament's debate over how to label energy sources. MEPs have backed a controversial proposal that classifies gas and nuclear power as green investments, despite concerns that it could help Moscow finance its war against Ukraine. But supporters say nuclear and gas are less polluting than oil and coal and can help Europe transition to a renewable future. Ada Sanchez-Alonso now reports.
Gas and nuclear energy are now considered sustainable energy sources. The European Parliament rejected this Wednesday a proposal to exclude these two resources of the green investments. In other words, nuclear and gas will be able to benefit from EU's investments to fight against climate change, as proposed by the European Commission. For Green MEPs, the result of the vote questions the EU's commitment to climate change.
Well, this is a disaster for the European Green Deal. I mean, if you want to lose credibility by shooting yourself on the foot, this is precisely what you need to do.
Who's against? The vote was expected to be quite tight, as political groups were divided by national interest. But in the end, the result was clear. A majority of 328 MEPs against 278 were not opposed to considering nuclear and gas as transitional energies. For the supporters of the European Commission's January proposal, this was a necessary step.
I think it just reflects the needs. It's the gas only when replacing coal, only when using the best available technologies. And regarding nuclear, nuclear is risky. That's why it's not in the green category, but it is decarbonized. So that's why it's useful to be used in the fight against climate change.
This proposal, known as taxonomy, will allow the classification of investments as sustainable or not. Therefore, gas and nuclear energy will be considered as transitional energy sources, as they have low CO2 emissions. If the Council, the institution representing the Member States, does not oppose this classification either, taxonomy will come into force in 2023. Ada Sanchez-Alonso, Euronews, Brussels.
Well, to discuss what that new bill will mean, we can speak to Alina Toplinsky now, a nuclear energy advisor and a partner at law firm Pillsbury Winthrop Shaw Pittman in London. Thank you for being with us this evening. Good to have you on the programme. Critics have said that this is a gift to Vladimir Putin and to Russian gas when member states have not yet fixed a deadline to stopping gas imports. Is this the right signal to be sending to the Kremlin right now when it continues its war on Ukraine?
Well, certainly, I think this is a little bit misguided. If you can see the statements that have come out of Ukraine, Ukraine has been very supportive of this movement because Ukraine understands the need for energy security. And in Ukraine, for example, nuclear energy is a key part of its deep decarbonization strategy, as in Europe. It's worth noting that gas does not mean unabated gas necessarily. It could mean natural gas plus CCUS plus carbon capture, utilization, and storage. But ultimately, the scale of the challenge that we have in the energy transition is so significant that we need all zero carbon and low carbon sources of energy. And certainly nuclear energy as well as gas with carbon capture and storage should be among those.
So on that point then, with regards to nuclear, which you just mentioned there, I mean, is that the right move when there are still concerns about waste disposal, for example, about how long it actually takes to decommission these plants? There are still questions about nuclear. Should it be included?
I think some of the questions are a bit misguided and date back to some of the concerns that anti-nuclear groups had starting in the 70s and 80s, looking at technologies that are really no longer in use, some of like the old Soviet technologies and strategies that have since been revamped. So, for example, waste is really a political issue. There have been a number of very good scientific studies and very firm studies that show that we can dispose of waste, and the amount of waste is quite insignificant. And you have countries like Finland, like Sweden, like France that have firm plans for geological disposal of waste. You have advanced nuclear technologies that produce less waste, that are small and modular and can be deployed to decarbonize not just the power sector, but also those difficult to abate sectors such as industry, transportation, and buildings. So some of the narrative around nuclear energy in some parts of the EU has been really misguided. But if you look at public support today for nuclear, even in the EU, in those countries, including Germany, it is significantly growing.
All right, Elena Toplinsky there, a nuclear energy advisor and partner at law firm Pillsbury Winthrop Shaw Pittman. Elena, thank you. Well, the rise in energy prices due to the war in Ukraine has seen inflation rise across much of the globe, and in Turkey it is creating a perfect storm for an already embattled economy. Bella Jewell reports.
Protesters chant and wave placards outside the Turkish Health Ministry in Ankara. They're angry about poor living standards for medical professionals. Many health workers are leaving the country in hopes of finding a better quality of life, as inflation soars here at almost 80%.
Almost 1 in 4 of my resident doctor friends are studying language courses. Most of them study German. They're completing their residencies here and going to Germany as specialist doctors. There is a very serious brain drain, a very serious labour drain. But I don't judge my friends because the profession has no real value here.
The cost of living crisis has deepened in Turkey, with consumer prices rising by almost 5% on a monthly basis, something President Erdogan wrongly blames on high borrowing costs.
We can say that inflation is actually directly related to brain drain. Of course, before focusing on inflation, it's necessary to focus more on the causes of inflation. The things that create inflation are actually the bad economic policy of Turkey.
In March, the Turkish leader said that doctors who wanted to go abroad can go ahead and leave. He later softened his tone by saying he believes they'll come back as soon as the country offers them a brighter future.
Well, still to come, a baptism of fire for French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne as she makes her first address to a divided parliament. We'll have the latest from Paris. This is Euronews Tonight. Welcome back. In her first address to the National Assembly, French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne said that the country must cut off all gas from Russia and stand united in its support for Ukraine. Energy dominated Borne's speech, which was often met by hostile moans and groans from the left and right-wing opposition. Borne's own tenure is already on shaky ground after President Macron's En Marche movement failed to secure a majority in last month's parliamentary elections. We're closely watching that speech from Paris is our international correspondent Annelise Borges. We can bring her in now. Good to see you, Annelise. What were the standout moments in terms of policies for you from that speech?
Hi there, Helena. Well, this was much more of a general speech, a political declaration of sorts from the government. Elisabeth Borne came here with a message of what will be Emmanuel Macron's new priorities and plans for the next few months. So nobody was expecting concrete policy announcements right now. But what stood out was the fact that she confirmed that the government's intention to nationalize, to buy all stakes in the electric utility company EDF. Elisabeth Borne spoke multiple times about the energy crisis in France and in Europe as a result of the war in Ukraine. She actually said that one of her priorities will be to cut France's dependency on fossil fuels. She spoke about climate change. She said that nuclear energy sources should be an alternative. She also mentioned the economy at length and said that one of her priorities will be to address French purchasing power. She said also that one of the priorities of the government will be the creation of jobs and not any kind of jobs. She said that France needs good vacancies going forward. She also mentioned one explosive, one controversial reform, the reform of the pension system. She did say that the French will have to work a little longer. So a wide range of issues, a vast speech of almost 2 hours where she laid out quite a lot of some of the government's intentions and plans for the next 5 years.
Well, Annelise, of course, she was talking to a divided parliament. So how easy or difficult will that make implementing those plans?
Well, it was remarkable to watch how much moaning and groaning, as you said, how much shouting there was in the room while Elisabeth Borne was actually delivering that speech. Her main message really was one of compromise. She asked these members of parliament here to work together towards building a new model, one where there will be dialogue, one that she says will be capable of addressing some of the multiple challenges ahead for France. But honestly, if this session is anything to go by, it's going to be difficult for Elisabeth Borne to actually even make her words heard. She didn't call for a vote of confidence on her speech, something that is traditional here in France for prime ministers to do after their first appearances in Congress. But many political analysts were saying she was right not to do that because it was a risky move. In fact, leaders of the opposition said the same thing. Marine Le Pen, the leader of the far right, responded to Elisabeth Borne shortly after her speech, saying it was a good thing for her not to call for the vote of confidence because nobody here actually trusts her government, according to Marine Le Pen.
Yeah, as you say, potentially a telling moment there. Annelise Borges in Paris. Annelise, thanks a lot. Agricultural workers in the Netherlands have been protesting against government plans to reduce nitrogen and ammonia emissions. And the emotion on the streets has led to the spread of misinformation online. Matthew and our team in the Cube have been taking a look.
Indeed, Helena, protests and rallies often provide fertile ground for misinformation to spread. Thousands of farmers in the Netherlands have been protesting against the Dutch government's plans to reduce nitrogen oxide and ammonia emissions by the year 2030. Workers in the agricultural service industry say that they are going to be severely impacted because they rely on nitrogen products for the fertiliser. And as you can see, farmers have driven their tractors across the country, blocking a number of major roads. Now, on Tuesday night, police in Heerenveen said that they had fired both warning and targeted shots during clashes and when they said a threatening situation arose. Nobody has been injured, but it's clear the tensions on the ground around these farmers' protests have been increasing. And that's where we've seen some misinformation spreading. A number of users on social media have claimed that this video shows plainclothes police officers trying to infiltrate the farmers' protest before they are attacked and have stones thrown at them. You can see that one version of this video on Twitter has received more than 1.2 million views. But this video does not show a recent farmers' protest. You can use open source tools on the internet to reverse search and find when a video was first posted online. And by doing that, you will come across this video, which, as you can see, was shared on Twitter in August 2020. This video actually shows clashes between protesters and police at a COVID-19 demonstration in The Hague in August 2020. It does not show clashes between farmers and plainclothes police officers. Despite this misinformation, though, Helena, we do know that some violence has occurred. Police in the Netherlands say that 3 people were arrested on Tuesday night on suspicion of driving a tractor at the authorities. And given that the police responded with those warning shots, an independent investigation has also been launched.
All right, Matthew and team, thanks a lot. At least 47 police officers have been injured during a demonstration in North Macedonia against a compromise on joining the European Union. In the capital Skopje, thousands of people have been protesting for days over a proposal tabled by France aimed at lifting Bulgaria's objections to North Macedonia's membership. The injuries occurred when a group broke off from the main protest, throwing stones, metal bars, eggs and Molotov cocktails at the Parliament building. Prime Minister Dimitar Kovacevski has condemned the attacks. Plenty more on the other side of a short break. See you then. British painter Lucian Freud was one of the most important figures of 20th century contemporary art. The grandson of neurologist Sigmund Freud, Lucian was renowned for his intensely realistic and biographical works. Now a special exhibition has opened in his grandfather's former house to commemorate what would have been his 100th birthday. Bella Jewell reports.
It is in this London house where Sigmund Freud lived the last years of his life that a unique exhibition of his grandson Lucian Freud is taking place. Marking the 100th anniversary of the birth of the painter, the items on display explore the relationships within this famous family.
He said, all my work is autobiographical because it's about people I know and places that I know. obviously people he was closely related to come into it quite a bit, especially his mother, but also many of his children.
The largest painting, originally intended as a portrait of his daughter Rose Boyt, depicts family growth. Alongside her husband and baby, her stepson Alex also features, wearing a Jimi Hendrix t-shirt.
We really wanted to just make the point that, you know, all families are complicated. This is something that Sigmund, Lucien's grandfather, investigated in a very radical and revolutionary way, and his insights into family dynamics are still ones that resonate with us today.
Lucien Freud, the painter, and his family will run from the 6th of July until the 29th of January next year. Bella Jewell, Euronews.
We leave you with a no comment from Pamplona in northern Spain, where the sound of raucous crowds and firecrackers marks the start of the 6-day bull running festival, which has been held in the town since the 1400s. Thanks for watching Euronews Tonight. So what order do we want to do it in then? Because I've got Macedonia in the prompter now, but not just Macedonia. Just read it. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's cool. Yeah, great. Oh, right, okay. Yeah, that's fine. So we're going to go Macedonia, and then South Africa I'm going to read, and then I'm just going to... yeah, that's right. Plenty more on the other side of the break. Yep, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, all good. Kovacevsky. At least 47 police officers have been injured during a demonstration in North Macedonia against a compromise on joining the European Union. In the capital, Skopje, thousands of people have been protesting for days over a proposed tape... Sorry, can I take that again? Carry on. Sorry. I should have just carried on. Right. Other proposal tabled by France. Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, the injuries. Yeah. At least 47 police officers have been injured during a demonstration in North Macedonia against a compromise on joining the European Union. In the capital, Skopje, thousands of people have been protesting for days over a proposal tabled by France aimed at lifting Bulgaria's objections to North Macedonia's membership. The injuries occurred when a group broke off from the main protest, throwing stones, metal bars, eggs and Molotov cocktails at the Parliament building. Prime Minister Dimitar Kovacevsky has condemned the attacks. Plenty more on the other side of a short break. See you then.